dynamic Mr. Mohandas Pai, as we all know, who is very erudite, articulate, and has a very forward-looking vision for our country. So with these very little words, may I now invite Mr. Pai to come and give his lecture.
Folks, thank you for inviting me to deliver this lecture. I'm very grateful to FICCI, and it's good to be here to talk about school education. All of us are very anxious about the education of our children, and we keep saying that the future of a country depends upon the education that the children get, especially in their formative years. We've been making this speech for the last 70 years, and we go back home and forget about it the moment we get out of the venue. And it's true that we have significant challenges in India. With the largest number of school children in the world studying in school, 26 crores, not in China has ever had 26 crores. Class 1 to 10 is about 24 crores, 11 to 12 is 2.35 crores. We have 15,16,000 schools in this country. There are only 165 children per school, which is suboptimal and very small because we have a very large number of single teacher schools. 30% of government schools are single teacher schools, and the education is terrible. And if you look at data, 70% of children who come to class 1 complete class 10. Only 52% of children who come to class 1 complete class 10. 43% clear class 12 or go to class 12, and only 33% of class 1 go to class 12. That means out of 100 who enter at class 1, only 33 complete 12 years of schooling. They pass out with a pass degree. And about 24.5 go to college. But the numbers are huge. The numbers are very, very huge, and that's the challenge that India faces. In college today, we have 3.4 crore young people. The output per year from colleges is 88 lakhs. No country has 88 lakhs coming out from college. No country. And every time somebody compares of Finland and all the nice countries Shobha wants to go to say India should do this, I think they don't understand what India is. Finland is just maybe 1/10 of Delhi. So pick up the top 50 schools of Delhi, compare them with Finland, you do very well. But nobody has got 15 lakh schools. Nobody has faced this challenge in 6,000 years of civilization. And let's not compare the Singapore, Finland, and anybody else. Even China produces only 16 million babies a year. We produce 25 million babies, even now. It's a lot. It's stabilized for the last 30 years. It's not gone up. So we have unique challenges. We must come out with unique solutions. So I want to talk about Education 3.0 because I believe the future is already upon us, and we are living in the past. Education has two components. The first component is a learning component, and the second component is a regulatory component. The regulatory component is captured by the academics who don't want to change, by the government who doesn't want to change, by the bureaucrats who don't want to change, by the political leaders who don't want to change, but send their children to the best private schools. All political leaders, 99%, send their children to the best private schools, and they bash up the private schools. We need a law in this country that all government servants, all political leaders should mandatorily send their children to government schools. And if you do that, the government schools will improve. Because in every country, government schools should provide education for the largest number of people. It cannot be done by the private sector. About 35–40% of Indian schools children are getting educated in the private sector because the parents want to go to the private sector because they feel they're not going to get good education. Even though the infrastructure is good, the teachers are very good. And we have 1.16 crore teachers in all the schools in this country. See, 11 million teachers across the country. We spend on education 4.25% of GDP. It's not funny. 4.25% by the public, the government. Privately, we should be spending another 3%. So we are spending 6.5 to 7% on education in this country of GDP. This is very, very large. We are not behind any country in the world. We must look at proper data. And in the midst of all this, 3.0 is upon us. We are a $2.25 trillion economy. We need to get this right. We are a very large economy, the 7th largest in nominal terms. 8.4% growth rate every year in dollars from 1991 to 2016. You've got to be proud of your country. This is not a tin pot country. This is not a banana republic. It's a solid country. 8.4%. The only country which has done better than India is China, 9.9% from 1978 till 2014. All right? We are 8.7 trillion GDP economy in PPP terms, in purchasing power terms. 8.7, third largest in the world, bigger than Japan, bigger than Germany. China is number 1, 18 trillion, America 17.7, and India is third. By 2030, we'll be a $10 trillion economy in nominal terms. We can grow 8 to 10% a year. We've grown 8.4. So this is the base of the economy in which we are preparing our children to go to school. The world is a knowledge economy today, based upon knowledge, and I'll take you through this. Consumption and investment will fuel our growth, and technology needs to be leveraged. Technology is the horizontal across all facets of life. And without technology, we have no future. Increasing income is a key to growth, to grow this economy. Our per capita income is $1,800. It's very poor. 1 billion people live on $1,000, and 300 million people live on $4,000 a year, right now. 1 billion people live on $1,000 a year, and 300 million people live on $4,000 a year. In a family of 5, $20,000 could be the income of a family for 300 million people. So there are segments and layers within India which we have to do. So nothing like one India. There are layers in our society. There are states at various stages of development. For example, Tamil Nadu has got a gross enrollment rate of 44% of children in the age group of 18 to 23. 44%. That's very large. It's almost like a developed country, right? Maybe West Bengal has got 19%. Bihar has got 12%. Bihar and Tamil Nadu are not the same. We are a collection of 29 different countries, each one in a different region. So let's not compare India and call India. We must go by the states. Education is a key lever in creating the environment for the development of a future-ready workforce that can extract value from India's information infrastructure. So education is the key initiative that we must drive at in this country, and guess that's why all of us are here. How has education developed over the last 3,000 years? Education started off in what we call Education 1.0. 1.0 is the Gurukuls of India, the academies of Greece, because these are the two centers of civilization, similar in China, where there was the teacher, the rich feudal class, and the nobility sent their children. They stayed with the teacher, and the teacher taught them astronomy, science, whatever it is that they were germane, and religion to them, and it went on one-on-one as a debate, staying together. That's a very rich way of teaching young children, and it worked up to a point, but it was unscalable because 0.001% of society had an education and the rest did not have an education. It was reserved for certain class of people. But the veracity of the model, there are not enough teachers, not enough philosophers. So we heard about teachers in India, we heard about the village school in India, we heard about Plato and Aristotle in Greece. It was very restrictive. So formal education remained the realm of a few. Then came the Industrial Revolution. An industrial revolution transformed society because it was the age of machines. It started with the steam engine 200 years ago, when the steam engine went off the patent. So the rapid technological transformation, people came from the farm to the cities and the factories. The merchant class became dominant, not the feudal class. So wealth became something that you got from factories and trade and not from land. And thus the transformation of society started up in, in Europe. So machines replaced human labor for all the brute force applications. Till then, India and China made up 45% of world GDP by 1820, primarily because we had very large population. The wealth of a country was known by the size of the population because they could produce more. India was an artisanal economy, very rich economy because we had a lot of people. The surpluses went to a small set of people. Then came the factories. And when the factories came, people who were like venture capitalists of today put money, they wanted a global market, colonization started, the global supply chain started, and the steam engine, the automobile, the airplane, value chains expanded around the world, and that led to the need for a lot more educated and trained people in the workforce to manage the machines and manage a much more complex society. That is the driving force education 2.0. What is it? Mass enrollment, broadcast one to many, like I'm doing today. You come to a class, you have a curriculum, you have credits, your examination, you have textbooks, you have a government, you have everything else, and I come and teach you because I read more books than you. Then you write down the notes, pass an exam, you get a degree, you get a job. Right? That's the process that you have today. So it was one to many, focus on rote learning, not one-to-one, not on critical thinking, not on problem solving, because you require a large number of people, and the single method to teach everybody. It was uniform like the factories of those days, which are standardized. We've seen how industry has gone to Industry 1.0 to Industry 4.0. Industry 1.0 was steam engine, 2.0 was assembly line, 3.0 was the PLC machine, 4.0 is with sensors and IoT and robotics that has come today. So it had poor quality in creating a critical number of people who could think, because those were widgets. You're a clerk, you come do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you get a job, right? It's a forced expansion of access at the cost of personalization, dedicated attention, but needed because you wanted to create an educated working class. And this is what created the middle class all over the world. And it worked, but knowledge was limited to books. Knowledge was limited to a syllabi. Knowledge was available in a confined area. So India achieved scale in this model. We have 25 crore young people in class 1 to 10. 25 crores. We have 2.35 crores 11 to 12. Then we have 34 crores in college. And this is the actual number of people who are actually studying. That's the government number of enrollment, but enrollment and people maybe at 20% less. We spend a lot of money, and youth literacy rate is 90.2. So India has adopted this method, and we have solved one part of the education problem, giving access to everybody. Most young people are in school. The dropout rates are high. Only 24.5% of youngsters 18-23 go to college, but we've come a long way in the last 20 years. We have a problem of quality, and we have a problem of creating critical thinkers, but the first problem of access is something that we have done. So education 2.0 is mass enrollment. It's now time for education 3.0. Why? Education 3.0 is a reflection of what is happening in society today. Distributed computing, cloud architecture, near infinite big data infrastructure, machine learning, applied artificial intelligence, 3D printing, autonomous robotics. We are seeing a value chain expansion and labor immersion. That means the machine age, we started with steam engine, have now led to intelligent machines. Machines have got intelligence, like we have intelligence. In our mind, there are billions of neurons. The neurons connect to each other by weak electrical impulses and chemical reactions. Love, affection, hate are all chemical reactions in the mind. It's a robo. The memory is stored in the mind, right? Now, machines have got the ability to take enormous amount of data, understand them, store them, analyze them, and come out with an answer. For example, IBM Watson has got 45,000 diagnoses of oncology cases. If a doctor tests you and comes to an oncology case, it puts it in the computer. In 22 seconds, it comes out and says right or wrong, because it compares the diagnosis with 45,000 cases and comes out with its own. And the more cases that go on, it becomes richer, better than a human being. The biggest chess player in the world has been defeated by a robo. The Go player has been defeated by a robo, because machines have got infinite capacity for memory. They work 24/7. They never get tired. They don't go to sleep. And they are able to analyze the data based upon the algorithms they have. So a revolution is coming in society, and we must prepare for this, and that's why we need education 3.0. Along with it, look at this. Humanity's accumulated knowledge is freely available on the web. All the accumulated knowledge of humanity for the last 5,000 years available on the web. Something may be missed, but still is available on the web. You can Google, and you get the answer. So a child today knows how to Google at 3 and get the answer, right? Is indexed and queryable. You can put a query and say, I want to know why the sky is blue. Thousands of people reply to you and say why the sky is blue. You don't require a teacher to tell you why the sky is blue, right? So you can learn by yourself because knowledge is available. In 2.0, knowledge was in books, in the libraries. There were a set of people who read all the books. They came and taught you. Now everything is available for you. You need a mobile phone with a rich data plan. There are 6 million mobile phones to 7 billion people, and 3.5 billion have got smartphones. And a mobile plan in India costs $50 a month with Jio, and it's almost free. Mukesh will give it away free for the next 1 year. Keep asking. So if you got a cheap smartphone for 2,000 rupees, connect to the web, you get all the information in the language of your choice. You could get a language of your choice, and people talk to you. Then, the content, all the raw material has to be put into a form that teachers do and put it into a screen or teach in a lecture. All the form in form of flipped classrooms, lectures, multimedia is available along with the MOOCs. Most of it is available for all schools, is available for all colleges, from the best faculty in the world. So Feynman lectures could be available to you. The top 1% of the global faculty, all the lectures are available, mostly free, and it's going to be free as we go along. So all subjects are available. On-demand tutoring, you pay $100, a mathematics professor can tutor you on the web. Peer-to-peer learning, you can get to networks and sit together globally and learn. Personalized and generative course structures. So all this is coming. And I envisage the next 5 to 10 years, a global virtual university, which will certify all universities with courses and give them credits. So you could say, I want a bachelor's degree in nuclear science, in biotechnology, with dance and logic and music, along with, let's say, IT, from the best universities, go to every university, do the course under MOOCs, get it certified, get all those credits, give it to this university, certify them, and they give you a degree. Why is a degree required? A signaling device. Degree is a signaling device. The employer says, there's a degree. And for me, it's a matter of pride. I got a degree, I put it in my house and say, degree dekho, degree hai, degree, whatever it means, right? For self-pride and for employment as a signaling paper. So the signaling paper has got value, but all employees today come and call you for a test. So the value is just as the entry criteria, not as an employment criteria. So they could say, I want a person with this particular skills, and you could get those skills, and you could get hired. So what does it matter what kind of degree you want? So why have a standardized degree? So information memorization, brute force recall is being made irrelevant. Problem solving, curiosity, and innovation are the key. And with robotics and everything coming, jobs are going to become scarce because the machines are going to do jobs. And world over, people are saying the machines have to pay social security to pay jobs, and you need universal basic income. Every citizen getting a monthly compensation from the government for not doing work because there are no jobs. I just came from a Niti Ayog panel to talk about jobs in this country, and it's horrifying. Let me give you data. 25 crore babies, maybe 1 crore die before the age of 5, 24 attain age of 21, 30% marry or don't want jobs because 45% of population depends on agriculture. So leave them out. You got 70%. 70% is maybe 1.7 crore people wanting jobs. We produce 55 lakh, 60 lakh jobs a year. For the last 10 years, 1 crore people who come out and attain the age of 21 don't have jobs, have got bad jobs. So Gujar agitation, Jat agitation, Patel agitation, Kam agitation, Maratha agitation, all agitation wanting government jobs. In the next 10 years, there's going to be another 10 crores. By 2025, 20 crore people, age group of 21 to 45 with no jobs. And they're all going to fight. So there's going to be social tension all over the country. And the middle part of India, the population growth rate is still about 3.2 fertility in Bihar, 2.8 in UP, 2.4 in Rajasthan. In the whole of the south is below replacement rate of 2.1 at 1.7. Bengal is 1.6. Punjab is 1.6. So India is very different. And there are 10 million people who internally migrate every year. So this is going to be the biggest challenge, and that is the lost generation. No demographic dividend, only nightmare. How to get past it is something that we need to think about. And in the midst of this, automation, job losses. When automation comes, jobs are going to be impacted because there are 3 kinds of jobs. First job, left brain, right brain, creativity and logic. So architects, software engineers, dancers, musicians, creative people, they'll have jobs because you can't do that. Second largest amount of jobs, 60%, for the middle class, repetitive job, rule-based job, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out. Those jobs are going to be automated, like in the banks. In the last 15 years, the Indian banking system has grown by 10 to 15 times. Employment has grown 5%. Only 5% in the banking system is happening in this country. Employment is only 5%, whereas it's grown 10 to 15 times. So this is what is going to happen. At the bottom, they're going to be people who individual, workers, like hairdressers, people who serve you in a retail store, or possibly people who drive a car. Even that job may go with autonomous cars. They will remain because they're expensive to automate. A fully loaded robo in the US costs $5 an hour. Minimum wage in America is $9 an hour. They want $15. All of them are gone. The capitalists are going to win the day. And that's the situation today. So we need 3.0. What is 3.0? 3.0 means we need to have open public infrastructure for all data and knowledge and content to be freely available as a national resource base. We need tech-based pedagogy. So in a class, you don't come and talk to people and give them content or information. What you do is you post problems for them and tell them to do a project and ask them to think, go get all the data, point to them, and come out and ask them questions. So all the content that you want to give, you give it to them in the flipped classroom and discuss it so people start thinking. And when children start thinking, the neurons connect and it stays in the mind. And they become excited. They are alive. The mind is alive. A child of 5 which is so curious, by the time the child gets 10, we deaden the child's mind and make him a widget. Now in 3.0, the child of 5, we arouse his curiosity, ask them to create, discover, go around and find things for themselves and guide them and change the whole curriculum. When they come out of class 10, it happens in Jiddu Krishnamurti, but they become very genteel. You've got to be slightly more aggressive with more competition. So you teach them how to solve problems, identify problems, get the data and solve the problem. And that requires tech pedagogy because knowledge network, personalized adaptive learning should all be blended. So open public infrastructure, what is that? Connect all schools and colleges, every child to have a device and connect it, and open up the entire student base as a base for good teaching content. Like I said, education has 2 components, the learning part and the regulatory part. The regulatory part is stuck, it cannot be changed. But the learning part is getting disrupted. Children are now learning with IT and all the material in a way they want. Look at Baiju. Baiju is a classic example in Bangalore. We actually invested in him long back. And Baiju has now got 30,000 people coming and downloading. The pedagogy is fantastic. The learning, they can go from Science 101 to Science 105 in the same year. There's no limitations. So you actually learn, you begin to question. So learning is getting disrupted faster than the regulatory part. So the learning part, how children learn, how they do quizzes, how they write exam, everything is getting disrupted very fast because there's technology, there's content, things are happening. The regulatory part is behind, and this dichotomy is something that we had to do. Free, open, national knowledge base. We have to create more content. There's global content. You've got to customize it for Indian thing and open licensing. Frictionless infrastructure. Our universities should be set free. The school should be set free. Why shouldn't the school set be free? Let me explain why. We have a high dropout rate because you know what happens. 40% of people are going to the private sector because they give English, whatever bad it is, and they're perceived to be better. I don't know how much is perceived to be better. Maybe 10% of 40 is better. The balance 30 is as good or bad as the government system. I think 25% the government system is very good. 25% is possible. The balance is not so good. When you look at schools, what is the difference between various schools? There are only good schools and bad schools, irrespective of government or private. Good schools have good management. If the management is good, the school is good. The management is bad, the school is bad. The good headmaster in the government school, he does wonders. In a private school, good headmaster does wonders. All of you run schools. Why are you good? Because the management is good. You're focused on outcome, you're focused on teaching, you're focused on taking care of children, right? That's why you're good. But you don't have enough good management. 16 lakh schools, impossible to manage. It's a question of scale. They'll never improve. So we must make sure, but in the private sector and public sector, we don't discriminate. We don't cap the fees. We allow free competition to come in, and children who are not well off, we give them scholarships to go to the best school. Dr. Ambedkar got 2 PhDs in economics abroad. He's one of the greatest intellectuals of this country. He came from very poor circumstances, suffered discrimination, but such a great intellectual because he went to the best schools. Many other people born in similar circumstances never went to the best schools. But he went to the best schools. He became India's foremost intellectual. So we got to do that. Leadership. Use technology in schools and make sure that there's a system where there's no discrimination based upon whether you're private, public, semi-private, or whatever it is, are based on fees, but it must be based on outcome. So tech-driven innovation in pedagogy is coming. Data-driven continuous assessment, personalized adaptive learning, multi-format practice, etc. So I want to end by saying, we must optimize in education 3.0 to help students become problem solvers, to thinkers, because that's the future. If you're not a thinker, you are just doing what you've been told to do, then the future could be very bleak because the machine could do it better. And this could be the force multiplier to create an innovative, future-ready India. Thank you very much. Happy to answer the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pai, for an inspiring speech on Education 3.0. Now we would like to begin with our panel discussion. May I please invite Mr. M.S. Unikrishnan, Managing Director and CEO, Thermax Limited; Dr. Kiran Datar, former Advisor, National Knowledge Commission, Government of India; Ms. Sunita Sanghi, Advisor, Skill Development and Employment, Niti Aayog; Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, Country General Manager, Public Sector, Microsoft; Mr. Manit Jain, also our co-chair, FICCI Arise and co-founder, Heritage Schools; Ms. Manjula Pooja Shroff, MD and CEO, Calorix Group; Ms. Anuradha Monga, Head, Bangalore International School. Before we begin our panel discussion, I would like to invite Mr. Sadbir Singh Sidhu, Vice President EY, to make a presentation on our discussion paper, Vision School Education 3.0.
Hello everyone. I believe most of you would have received the short document that we have created. It's titled Vision for School Education 3.0. What I will do is I will give you a brief introduction about what we have tried to do in this document, and then I would request you to go back and read it at your own leisure. Now the objective of this document is actually to paint a vision for what our school education system should be in 2030. Now as all visions go, I would say it's probably easier to create a vision. But the real impact lies in actually implementing the vision, right? So as FICCI Arise is being formed and is working towards achievement of vision, I would request all of you, being a part of India's school education system, to go back and reflect on this. If you have any views or comments, feel free to mail back to us around what you think needs to be changed or improved or even, altered. And we'll try our best to do that, right? But also at the same time, we'll request you to think about how each of you in your own schools or institutions or as your role as advocates of school education, try and see how you can help the Indian schooling system go and hopefully achieve that vision, right? With that background, let me jump into the first slide that I have. I think Mr. Pai summarized the extent of our education system. It is large, it is complex. We have about 260 million students, the largest in the world, studying in this education system. Over the past 50, 60 odd years, we have to a large extent solved the problem of access at the elementary level. Our elementary level access is around almost 100% now. The challenge remains, as several speakers before me have also pointed out, in terms of improving the quality. So that's something which is core to this document, and there are several initiatives which we have spoken about which need to be implemented in order to do that. Right. So without spending further time on this, I will move on. As I said, we have to a very large extent solved the problem of access at elementary level. And one really needs to laud the effort of Indian government, which has spent a lot of money towards this, right? So Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and Right to Education Act of 2009 have made sure that every kid who's born in India has an opportunity to go to a school, right? Which I think all of us should thank the government for. Also at the same time, very importantly, private sector in India has played a tremendous role in providing that access, right? We are one of the very few countries where so many students go to private schools. So the ratio today is 43% of our kids go to private schools, schools outside the government operational control, right? And these schools, private schools, are about 25% of the total schools in India, but 43% of kids go to such schools, and this number continues to increase. So if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, the number of enrollments, even at an elementary level in India, continues to rise. It was around 25% in 2006 and has gone up to 38% in 2016. What it effectively means is, even though government has built a lot of schools and provided access, parents are still preferring to send their kids to private schools. So that speaks a lot about the quality of education that's being provided by the private schools being better at an average level than what the government schools are doing. Right? However, I think all of us would agree that the outcomes which are being produced by our schooling system as a whole are not really what they ought to be. I have mentioned a few studies which have been done which prove this point. So NCERT does this National Achievement Survey where they talk about the achievements that the Indian education system has achieved. And if you look at that survey, while we are improving in terms of quality outcomes according to that survey, but still there is a lot of disparity. There are states in India where the level of educational outcomes is 1/4 of that you would get in Delhi. So that's the level of disparity that we have. Pratham does an ACER survey to measure school level outcomes. And as per their survey, the proportion of students in class 5th who can read class 2 books is actually going down. So while we talk about providing access and making sure more kids are in school, the outcomes in terms of both literacy and numeracy are on a decline, which is something you can't imagine in this world, right? So we are all part of a system where things ought to be improved. You take any other sector in India, healthcare, aviation, pick a sector, you will only keep on improving. But in a sector or in a space as critical as education, the results of this survey are actually quite an eye-opener. One time when India tried to measure their outcomes on an international platform and got PISA done, I think the results are, I'm sure all of you being educators would know of the results, they were really bad. Yeah, we were second last from bottom, right? And that also showed the extent of improvements that need to happen in an education system. So with that background, the FICCI Arise is putting forward a vision for what an education system should be in 2030, right? Which is creating global productive citizens empowered with high order thinking, reasoning and problem solving skills, who are emotionally equipped and carry the ability to seamlessly adapt to disruptive change and become positive contributors to the world around them. Now that's the vision. What it would take to achieve this vision has been segregated in 4 pillars. The first one is access and equity. I think to a large extent, private schools as well as government schools have solved the access problem at the base level. But when you move towards secondary education, then the number of kids who actually go to school drops down a lot. So that needs to be changed. And still there is a lot of disparity even in access. So if you look at some socially disadvantaged groups in India, the levels of access at secondary level are much worse than others. So that needs to change. In terms of quality improvement, I think the most important factor that needs to change is teacher training and development. I think the HRD minister, when he spoke, he also emphasized the fact that our teacher training institutes are not producing the teachers that we need. So that needs to change. We as a country, or at least most of our country, is in a habit of curriculum and a syllabus-based teaching. So there is a textbook which is prescribed. Teacher will come in a classroom and read out from that textbook, complete a chapter, and then there's an exam or an assessment is held, which is at the end of the year to measure the outcomes. So that is by and far the mode of imparting education in India, and that's not measured. If there is a board exam that happens at the end of class 8th or 10th, and that is the only time when you actually really measure the performance, but there is no ongoing real-time assessment that happens. So that's another parameter which we believe needs to change. Every school should have an optimal infrastructure. We are not saying build very lavish schools, but some basic amenities around access to internet, computer labs, and even to the extent having a boundary wall and toilets, which is still not there in many schools, needs to be there, right? And last but not the least, we need to make sure that teaching is an aspirational career. I wanted to quote an example of Finland, but probably will not do so now. So moving on. third point around relevance, I think we are in an age of Industry 4.0, and the curriculum and what students are taught needs to reflect that, but that is not really so. With every changing government and different administration coming into place, what we are trying to teach keeps on changing, right? So that's, and it's not even modern in various aspects, so that needs to change. I think eventually when we have technology-led learning in classrooms, different kids need to be taught differently based on their abilities. So each child should ideally have their own learning path, and they should progress based on their learning abilities, right? And finally, talking about governance, I think all our regulations today are based on input-based parameters. How many classrooms do you have? Do you have toilet? Is there a road leading to the school? So all we measure is inputs, but that needs to change. If we really need to improve the outcomes of our education system, the regulations need to be output-focused, and they don't need to be same for everyone. So if a school is doing very well and is, let's say, producing good outcomes, then they could have a differentiated regulation, right? And those schools who are not producing outcomes or parents are not sending their kids to, they need to have a different set of regulations. So we need to build a regulatory framework which is enabling and based on self-disclosures, rather than the Inspector Raj kind of a regulatory framework we have in some states in India. So that needs to change. Coming to school leadership, in India, I don't think there is any formal program which prepares school teachers to be school leaders. Most of our principals are based on promotions, based on the number of tenure they have spent as a teacher. I think we need to recognize the point that somebody who's taught longer doesn't necessarily become a better principal. So there has to be, like we have teacher training and we are moving towards an in-service teacher training as well, there has to be a move to develop school leadership as well, right? And in several countries abroad, we have community schools where people from communities come together to form and sponsor a school. That's a concept which is not there in India at present. So maybe there is a need for a different type of schools which are community enabled and community led, rather than being led by the, let's say, the different government that are in force at that point of time. So these are the 4 pillars on which we are saying action needs to be taken to ensure that we have a better education system in 2030. And hopefully by 2030, we will have an education system which will address all of this. This graphic is actually, an attempt to explain what this system could possibly look like in 2030 with the child in the middle, right? And the school being what a school ought to be. Curriculum and pedagogy being based on a dynamic curriculum which imparts real world skills and is also rooted in what community wants that kid or a child to learn. And the facilitators will be visionary. They will have continuous learning. They will have adequate support staff so that they don't get a lot of admin work to do, which takes their time away. And hopefully, we will reach there. So that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. What we'll do now is, I think each one, I'll ask a few questions. Let's have a dialogue. Otherwise, then we can have differential views. It's good to have a 2030 vision because it's long enough not to lose hope, short enough to see it in our lifetime. Hopefully we'll live another 15 years. And long enough to make sure we could push it to 2050, at 2030 or thereabout. Now, Dr. Kiran, I got 2 questions for you. Do you agree with the vision as elucidated in this document? And what are the 3 things that we need to do to make sure that we realize it in case you agree with it?
The vision, by all means, I think it's covered an enormous range. And can I also say, at the risk of sounding very old, but I've been in education for many, many years, and I've seen it through many phases. I've worked with the National Knowledge Commission. Those of you who've had occasion to see the report would please reflect and see that a lot of that has been reflected. And had been reflected there with a lot of thinking and with a lot of actual looking at the conditions in this country. So I don't want to say that there is nothing new that can happen, but one conclusion I have come to is that as far as education is concerned, if you put the right people to look at the kind of issues that are facing this country, they are all going to come out with the same set of conclusions that these are some of the vital things that you need to do. Where does the problem lie then? Why is it that the first set of reports of the Knowledge Commission came out in 2009? They were actually the first Knowledge Commission reports that came out on education, because we were told it is so urgent. This is what you have to look at first before we get into other areas. And very little has happened on the ground. So it comes down to the fact that one of the major issues is that we somewhere are lacking the courage to break the mold. We have to walk. We have to make mistakes now. We have to accept some things and say, let's move. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We learn from that, but we move forward. The second thing I'd like to say is that, Mr. Pai, tremendous talk that you gave, and I've heard you earlier, and you really hit many things on the spot. But I'm going to debate with you on one particular issue, which is that I genuinely believe that unless you take a very solid look and push the regulation framework of how we are looking at education today, we are not creating the kind of enabling framework we need. In education, one conclusion I've come to is change can happen. Change will happen much faster if we create the right kind of enabling framework. And that enabling framework will not happen unless you look at the regulatory framework, unless you look at the kind of governance structures that you're setting up, both in terms of your school education and in terms of the university education. At the risk of sounding a little personal, let me give you just one very brief example. I've worked with higher education actually for most of my life, but I now sit on the board of many schools. We were given an opportunity a few years ago by the government of Delhi to say that we want to set up a new university. Will you please help us plan the framework for it? It was like a dream come true, because we had a very supportive chief minister who was willing to listen to us. And we actually looked at the kind of roadblocks that most universities have, and we tried to deal away with them. The result was, and I would invite anybody to take a look at that experiment today, is the B.R. Ambedkar University. It's a state university set up by the Delhi government. It's a liberal arts and humanities university. It is coming up, it has come up beautifully. Within 5 years, it is the one new university that's already got an A rating, but beyond that A rating, it is the kind of work that is being done. It is the kind of creativity. It's the kind of coursework and structure. It's the kind of autonomy. It's the kind of governance structure that that university is enjoying at many levels, even though it is totally financed by the Delhi government. So a critical issue, of course, and we all realize, is the autonomy that is going to be given to a lot of these institutions and how we are going to push it. And Mr. Pai, the third thing that I would say, which you absolutely hit on the head, that it is the kind of people who run the educational institutions. Yes, it's the kind of passion that they bring to it. It's the kind of feeling that they bring. And that's where it shows the clear difference. I sit on the board, and this is something that I really get upset of so many large institutions today, which have been the torch bearers of their times, between the old established schools, for example. And they are content to just carry on the way that they've been carrying on, because the owners, there's no push to say, because they are absolutely pushed. People are standing in line for admissions to these institutions. But that's where the link is going to come in with what you talked about, that unless that link between the kind of job situation and where we create the mindset and the attitude which says that these degrees really don't matter, we are looking at the performance. And that is already beginning to happen in some measure, but not large enough. Because we know that the kind of things that industry is doing to actually retrain and train their own people. But that can never replace a public system of education. And I would totally agree with you that for a country like India, even though I'm totally supportive of private education, and I feel that the government has to get its hands off, let them determine their own fees, let them actually make profit. Why not? If the health sector can make profit, why can't education make a profit? As long as you're creating the necessary guidelines for it. But it can never replace what your public system education is going to give to this country. And that is something we all have to remember and we all have to support. And just in finishing, because I think there'll be a lot of schools here today, one thing I'd like to say, and this is a plea. The government has come out with this 25%, the right to education, of educating 25% EWS children. And I think if you bring a different attitude to this, which says that, all right, maybe it is being mandated on us today, but we are being given an opportunity. Let us take it as that opportunity of doing a kind of service back to the country. Let us see how best to make it work, rather than saying that it can never work and this is something that is being thrust on us. You will see there are schools that I work with, and I take my hats off to them. The kind of work that they are doing, their alumni associations, they are putting in funds to support this kind of education. So let us look on it as a national issue, as something that we need to do. So thank you very much.
That's very good. Thank you very much. And I think the point about diversity in schools is very important, because children should go to a school where the students reflect the diversity of a society, because after school and college, they're going to live in the same society. You can't live in a gated community. The bad air is going to come there. You got to go out on the roads, and the roads are very different. So I studied in a Jesuit institution where my classmates were children of school teachers, butchers, laborers, and rich people. They came in a car, they walked. And to me, my hero was the school football captain, who was the son of a butcher. When I meet him today, I look up to him with awe and say, you are my hero. But he says, I'm his hero. But we created a network because we had to do that. Okay, now I'll ask Mr. Unnikrishnan to talk to us about, as an industry leader, what is his expectation of the output of schools and colleges? What do you think is going to be the, let us say, young person finished of 21, 25, who is going to come to him in the next 10 years? What is his expectation, and why we need to change?
The industry has already taken initiatives on their own, giving up on the education system of India. Sorry to say that way. We aren't getting any more the kind of people that whom we needed. So most of the larger industry today have their own training programs, or even engineering done partially in the engineering college where we sponsor it. Now, I will want to address it slightly differently. What industry will be needing tomorrow, I'll give with an example of one bearing company from the city where I come from. They have a factory employing around 500 people over there right now. It's a 30-year-old factory. Same capacity factory in Sweden operate from the same management of the company with 155 people. And they believe that that old factory in Sweden should be demolished and reconstructed. And the plan is ready. And the current question that they're debating is, should they have one worker or two workmen? So when you mentioned about jobless growth in the world, disappearance of the job which you depended upon manufacturing is going to be changing with exactly what you mentioned about 3D printing, metal deposition, advanced robotics is going to be changing with big data analysis added on to. IT industry is helping us to do that way. The real reason is what all of you have forgotten about that in the education system is that in year 2010, the number of smart and communicating network machines exceeded the human population. 7.3 billion was the human population in 2010, and the intercommunicating network machines increased by one at least in that particular year. The last 6 years what we achieved is it has gone by 4 times. There are 4 times more communicating network machines with each other today. And by 2025 this is supposed to be becoming 1:40. And the knowledge gap between human beings and the machines are increasing with the self-learning, machine learning happening. So a country like India, which believed that you're going to be educating people and making ITIs, diploma holders, engineers, even PhDs, we don't need them.
Huh?
We don't need them.
We don't need them?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do with them?
Yeah, well, that's a question. In fact, you answered part of that. The ILO propagated thinking of 8 hours of working is going to come down to maybe 4 hours in my thinking in the next 1 decade. And you'll pay the same salary for working for 4 hours. And possibly you'll go back to a system where nobody works in the factories and robots will work. And you'll have social security paid by the robot. Exactly, I liked it when you mentioned about it. We need to be understanding this education system that you're representing, I'm sorry to say that way, is defunct. You have to close down the colleges and schools. We don't need them anymore. We don't need any of the degrees that you're giving to people. Just go to an airport when you're going to be going back right now. A small baby will be crying there, 2-year-old or 3-year-old child crying. What will the mother give to that child?
iPad.
Well, the child is exposed to electronics of the advanced version before it understanding what is mathematics all about. And in the school, you'll start teaching 1 + 1 = 2. And that child to be learning electronics is going to wait for 17 years. where the knowledge has gone to this level and is going to be remaining like this. So are we creating a society of idiots in the future? Because the delta of knowledge that you're talking about right now, when my father was a student in the school, the average knowledge of the society was like this, and his knowledge was maybe something, say if this is society knowledge, he was somewhere over here. 30 years down the line, his son, me, when I had to be in the same level, this is a gap. My child is today studying in North America, in one of the better universities, but I tell him you're an idiot. Oh. And my grandson is going to, granddaughter, let me say, I'm not an MCP that bit. I'm sure the gap is going to be Jameen Asman. So exactly as you mentioned about the billions of neurons available to the neurotransmitters is incapable of picking the average knowledge gain that's going to be happening. Unless you demolish the education system, the manufacturing doesn't need people like you, I mean the conventional people. If somebody were to be thinking about an algorithm, which in any case can be created by a computer, if you were to compete against that, you're going to have some creativity within that. So knowledge has got two parts, one for maintenance, second for creativity. Now, if you want to be maintaining society, your knowledge is good enough for it. Because in any case, you will upgrade your knowledge, improve your knowledge. Improvement doesn't create anything. Creativity happens exactly, the child who's in that airport that you're giving that smart mission to the child, allow him freedom. Yeah, I agree with you. Schools starting with kindergarten up to the maybe, I would say, a master's level, where there is a biometric now and attendance earlier, is also a place where you confine people so they don't do anything wrong. Yeah, it's in my understanding, a school or a college is where people will drop a child, like the way when very small, they come and put you in a creche. It's an elevated creche that you guys are running today. I'm sorry to say that way. The parents don't have time to engage with them, so they drop it and they pay a fee also for it. That's why whether it's a government is cheaper, facilities are lower, private is air conditioned, you get good food and everything put together. You are running creches today. Where are you creating creativity? Why am I asking this question? Because Mohan, when you mentioned about it, it really struck me. My entire education or schooling, college engineering, and a master's later, I have not learned one equation created by an Indian. There were no pi equation I learned. There were no Pinto equation I learned also. I learned always Boyle's law equivalent to that. Science is bereft for this country. You want to know the reason for it? In 1788, when James Watt invented steam engine, immediately after that IC engines got created. In 200 years, when science has taken over the entire world, your poor country was fighting for its independence. And science is missing over here. We are only copying and what is created by the Western world, not applicable for India. So you don't have a rooting for science. If you really want to know about business, it starts with science. Science creates technology. Technology creates commerce. Commerce creates economics. And economics creates politics. One is creation of wealth, second is distribution of wealth. We had somebody from distribution of wealth sitting today over here. I'm sorry, in this forum I can say, I don't know whether India has got a future. Yeah, if you're going to have politicians of that stature who are running the future education for this country.
I think I got to use my pedagogy and stop you before we lose hope. But but tell us what should we do? Yeah. Tell us the answer. Give us some solutions. Give us the answers.
Absolutely. I would have preferred today, instead of this full people sitting over here, I would have preferred maybe students who are maybe at least maybe 15 years to 25 years sitting over here, half of them. Because today, the future of the country is decided by the past of the country or the current of the country. Education is an area where you're going to be involving, because when your company has to be producing a new product, you do a market survey. You go and talk to the prospective customer, take his opinion and create a product. Are we doing that? That's the only solution I want to give you, and I'll stop over there.
Okay, before we go to the next one, what we'll do is we'll ask, we'll ask Sanjeev to speak next, and then the schools will speak, because the input that you get. Is it okay, or you want to intervene right now? Huh? Okay, Sanjeev, now give us a little bit of hope how technology will make us better so that we don't land up in whatever Mr. Unikrishnan is saying. Then we'll have the schools tell us what do they think of the vision and how they're going to react to the three learned people here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pai, you actually has initiated a discussion about how technology can help and provide some answers. I think let me just put up my thought on the table. The assumption that we are looking into from seeing what today's community is all about will be drastically change the community we see tomorrow. And when we see the community differently completely, the way that we are interacting with us in a family us in a small community, and industry and employee or employer-employee is going to be very, very different. You have clearly carved out the definition of education 3.0 in that domain. But just give you an example. If I come from a business role, and when I see is capture the market share, today in terminology, this is not what we discuss in our boardrooms. What we discuss is create a new market for us. Now, how do you create a new market is a different exercise. Are we having a skill? Is Sanjeev is having a skill to create a new market? Because of the 20 plus years of experience, I can do something differently. But can I ask a young colleague of mine to create a market for us? It's a big challenge. And that's where the community, the tomorrow's community is coming out from. Having said this, I pick up a question what you asked to Madam Kiran on this. 3 things which is very important. And let me just shape my thoughts from that. Number 1 is, if technology is an answer, everybody understands in yes, yes, and yes, how much willingness is available in this room to adopt this technology by passion and willingness? Or by thrust. My principal says, go and attend this seminar. The teachers go in and does that. If I don't do certification, I'm out. I will not be able to get into the a head teacher if I don't do certification. This is thrust. You're not looking from the passion and willingness from your side, which needs to come out clearly. Say, I want to adopt technology. I want to enable technology. I want to make my learning experiences with my students in a very different fashion. That's the first point. So change the quantity part into the quality part of it, that how willingness I am. And the second is, you said, the 43% student goes to a private institution. And Madam said that the area of the importance for us is the public education system. No matter what, whichever world that we live in, until unless this is being completely transformed, we all will be sitting across every year and talking the same language. It is not going to change. So that means the public education system needs to be really transformed in a big way. And the focus for entire education 3.0 needs to be plugged in. What is that basic pillars needs to be changed in this education 3.0 for public sector or a public education system. Third, which is more important, is companies like us, who stands for technology and talks a lot of good English and lot of management on technology and technology. What exactly as a global citizen we are doing to put this into the system? And we are be able to put across a global citizen and say, hey, I take a responsibility of an education system to be improved upon, and whatever small bit or a large bit that I can do, let me contribute that. That is what I come from and say, from examples like quoted around, can I leverage a world-class ICT framework to be adopted by the school? Which is not a layman terminology, which is something which you used to do day in and day out. And there are schools in India who are adopting it. Let's use this available resource from our global citizens like us, like Mr. Unikrishnans, who want to demonstrate that stuff. Pick it up and absorb it. The framework that is available world-class, use it, transform it, because it's not going to end. This is a framework which takes your journey from one to another level. But how you can use that to improve upon it is exercise. The second program that is available is you talk about of left and right brain. Until as we spark the fire inside the brain of innovation, it's not going to change. To make that happen, I don't know how much you're aware about it, there is a UNESCO program of innovation. How many school teachers do you know? Can you just raise a hand? Have you ever heard about UNESCO program of innovation? Thank you. Only 3 or 4.
No, there are lots of them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Some maybe 10.
Yeah, maybe more. Okay.
Maybe more? Okay,
20%.
assume 50%.
Okay, 50%.
Higher side. The 50% still needs to look into what this program is all about. If the other colleges, universities, and schools are able to leverage that program, why can't we? And I think that's the second element which comes into play. The third is machine language, embracing clouds and technologies for the current one. We did current scenarios of next to 3 to 5 years, but the technology will change faster. Let's leverage this 3 to 5 years gear that we have to embrace as much as we can. More important, which I come from, is one-to-one learning. ENY gave a report and talked about a one-to-one learning platform. A teacher, you start a session saying one-to-many. You're giving a lecture to all of us, you're sitting there and having listened to you. But one-to-one is a different level exercise, where I have something to do with my own brains, on my system, on my thinking, on my own experiences. And the teacher is actually sitting there looking at my data points and other data points and saying, where this person is going is the right direction or not, or wrong direction. And you enable that immediately. And that is available right now. leverage this from our technology providers like us, use it, challenge us, and say that, sorry, Sanjeev, this doesn't work. We'll make it life easier for you. But all these things needs to come out clearly saying that, hey, if I'm a global citizen, I want to demonstrate those technologies to be leveraged by you all. Couple of fun examples is expert education programs that we run. The expert education program that we're running in India right now is 240 expert education available as an experts. They are enabling around 100,000 teachers right now. Am I satisfied? No. The demand in the public education system is such a big, I'm happy to enroll as many as people around us to be part of the expert education program and to enable more and more and more teachers across the country. Because that is where you will be able to start exponential growth of technology enablement in various schools and colleges. One more point from example perspective of technology is how we are actually using student as a focus area for imagination. And using all these analysis on sides of the brain, saying that, hey guys, can you bring in your own thinking into the picture? Let me just give an example on statistics. Gallup survey, you know the Gallup survey. 45% of the students between 5 and 12 said, I want to do something different than the usual. What that something different, they don't know. Maybe entrepreneurship. Current scenario, 5 to 12, now current scenario, who's already passed out, who's already job in some of the good companies or entrepreneurs. We ask a question to them, how do you see yourself? What are the skills that you have and where you get the skills? 55% in US said the skills that they got is outside the school. Now imagine, if you replicate this survey in India, the numbers will be very, very different. So that means the student part of the journey needs to be completely challenged, saying that, hey guys, leverage the Imagine Academy. Leverage these type of initiatives by the corporate citizens or global citizens like us. Leverage that stuff and ask a student to be part of this journey. Because until you're part of that, the gap of 45% to 55% will in India will come out 80 to 90%, what Mr. Unikrishnan was talking about. And there's no outcome which is coming out from the school which is readily available for us to be leveraged. Having said this, I have a very optimism on this. It's saying that today, last year, 9 months back, only hundreds of people which were there, or teachers which were enabling the technology from my side of the story. Today we are 100,000. Tomorrow, I'm pretty confident will be a crores and crores and crores to come in place. I'm pretty confident on that. Enable those services from the citizens like us, and happy to take a journey in our school and colleges. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. There's nothing, I think this has been totally fascinating with 3 people giving such strong views. Just imagine 60% of our schools are in rural areas. 30% of our children are studying in single teacher, 2 teacher schools. And they're studying maths the way they may be hoping to understand. And here you're talking about, Madam Kiran talking about regulations to change and hope. Then Unikrishnan says, you guys are gone, there's no future, and it's true. I mean, I agree with him. I agree with him. I don't speak as strongly as him, but I agree with him. And Sanjeev saying, yes, something is there. I think it's very fascinating. Now, Manjula. Now tell us, how are you going to make all this happen? Do you agree with the vision? And do you agree with the panelists here?
There's one thing, if I agree on one thing, it is the fact that between 3.0 education and Industry 4.0, there's a whole generation gap. If we as educators don't agree with it, we will be doing a great disservice. Now, there are a lot of hard-hitting statements that the gentlemen and the ladies have made. I'm going to come to that in a bit because I'm going to defend the education sector as much as I can. But robotics and artificial intelligence is not something we can shy away from. And I want to share with you some experiences that I've picked up from my recent trip in the US. If you have heard of Amazon Dot or the Microsoft Echo, for those of you who haven't, it's a small machine like this, round. Just look it up on Google. Round machine like this that is available for $50 today. This is a machine that is your private secretary, that does everything for you. So if you have a wired home through your computer, the favorite term is Alexa, because that's your secretary. So here are how kids now grow into a robotic environment. Alexa, turn off the light. Turn off the light of the kitchen, and the lights go off. Alexa, What's for lunch today? Alexa, what's the weather? Alexa, what's news? Alexa, what is Donald Trump saying? This is the real-time situation in California homes. A little kid I saw actually says this, "Good night, Google." Good night, Google.
Not Mama Papa.
You see, when she's going to bed, she has to say, because she's always, Mummy, Papa are gone to office. She and her older brother stay with Google all the time, and Alexa and Cortana. So she actually says, "Good night, Google." When she leaves her home, she actually says, "Bye-bye, Alexa." To this kid who is 1.5 years old, she cannot tell the difference between a real individual and a robot, and that is the reality. And there is nothing in our school system that we are doing to train students to that reality. I want to just shift this away to Google cars and automated machines. All of you who've heard of Tesla is an automated car that can self-drive. The Tesla has about 150 or thereabout moving parts. Compare that to a traditional, maybe Mercedes, that has tens of thousands of moving parts. And I'm never tired of saying this example. When Uber hit the world, and the whole world talked about Uberization, we as education people really did not break it down to see the impact that it's going to have on education. Uberization, and today Uber is getting bashed up in America for all the wrong reasons. Leave that aside. What is this whole concept of Uberization as economics talks about? Uber happens to be the single most largest taxi company in the world. It acquired the status in the last 3-4 years. It is a taxi company that does not own a single asset, physical asset. It doesn't own a single car. It is a software company. Take another example of Airbnb. Don't own a single hotel property in the world. Largest hospitality company. That is what we are producing our students for. To work for software companies. What is it we are teaching in the brick and mortar in the classrooms today that is actually preparing them for the real world? It is a fact that robots are going to take over. There's talk that a robot that can actually plow the agriculture field will be available for $100. India is an agrarian economy. What's going to happen to the 70% of the economics? I'll come back to the car example. Think when you have robotic cars driving, what's going to happen to the whole automobile industry? Let's look at it. So let's start with school level. Let's look at students. Our students may never require to learn driving as a skill. So all of these driving schools don't need to be in business. Road and transport authorities have to find something else to keep busy in. What's good is that automated cars are going to have much less accidents on the road. There's about 1.2 million accidents and deaths. So people are thankfully not going to die. But what's going to happen to the insurance companies then? They're going to have to do something else because life insurance is not going to work. Think of the car finance companies and the car insurance companies. They're going to have to do something else. When you have car automations, think of the tens of thousands of drivers we have in our country. The cleaners, the conductors, the entire mechanics of automobile industry, which is going to go out the window because of automation of the vehicles. What's going to happen to that? Now think of this public spaces. We have huge car parking lots. We don't need them anymore. Because automated cars will come from far, will pick you up, drop you, and go away. So those can become, hopefully, parks for our children, or community halls. That is going to be the future. When we sit in our classrooms and still teach, which we don't need to teach water cycle anymore, because they can not only see water cycle on Google, they can see it on augmented reality. They can actually see snow happening. We do not need to teach. What we need to teach children is to be prepared for a world that is ever changing, What we need to teach children is adaptability. What we need to teach children is problem solving. What we need to teach children is creativity. What we need to teach children is to adapt to an unknown world. That is the only job that we as teachers can do, and then build a better nation. Thank you so much.
Manjula, I don't know what to say. Now, Anuradha, please tell us, we still need values, we still need emotion, we still need teachers, we want to cuddle our children, and they shouldn't say, bye-bye, Google, they say, mama, papa, bye-bye, good night, mama, good night, papa. Please tell us.
To me, because I do think a little differently. To respect to everything, but this creativity is a great thing. I was with a Japanese research scholar only a few days ago. It's good to have robots, but robots are not creative. You go on a Google site and you say, which is the best Italian restaurant? They'll name nearby, they'll name this. Which is the worst Italian restaurant? The same name will come. Try it out and it'll work. Yes. So creativity is something which we need. Children have to first respect their own identities, but then only will they be positive about other identities. We're talking about global, global citizens. We have to understand the implications of global citizens, and I feel that our education policies have to be made around that, so the kids know how the world works. So when you say how the world works, all what we have said will come under that line, in short, that's how the world works. We are an interconnected society. We have to be sustainable. We forget, everybody has different versions of sustainable society, but keeping in your own heart, first you have to understand Earth. All this will come. But what are we doing to sustain our Earth? This is what I work with. We've talked about a lot about other things, but has any policies talked about children who have learning issues, learning difficulties? We do a lot of work. I do a lot of work myself. And you see where are children, highly autistic kids, where they've reached today. So we have to work policies around them, just to say, oh, they're mad, they don't need to. I have seen it happen. Today, one of my highly autistic kid is playing in the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. She plays the harp. You know, what are we doing about that? What are those policies made? Are we doing anything more? I don't know, but we are doing it. If every time you guys are somewhere in our part of the world, which is south of India, Bangalore, a lot of kids, artists. Now, this is all creativity. The kids, they may not do, let's say they can't study history, but they're the greatest artists, you know. And so my whole question about education is also that we have to stress on globalization and interdependence. There are no more teachers, they're facilitators. We don't have teachers now. Kids think of their own, we just have to facilitate them, you know. Those days are gone, the talk and chalk are gone. But yes, to me, IT is still a tool. There's much more. Again, I'll repeat, creativity is very important. And whatever you say, my opinion is that machines cannot be creative. I don't know if you guys agree with me. This is just in short, but this is what I feel. This is where education should be going.
Manjit, now you heard everybody. Okay, you are the last in the line, so you are the benefit of the views of everybody. What is your view on the vision and what they have said and the way forward?
Can I get 30 minutes? Okay, I think to what Mr. Unnikrishnan was talking about, definitely we've been able to create a system where the levels of unemployment or the levels of unemployability, when we look at both, it is fairly evident that the corporates and the industry don't like the product, and on the other hand, it's also equally evident that the children don't like the process. So I don't know what we're doing as educators if we're not meeting industry demands, and we've got kids in herds in classrooms on an assembly line dreading every next period. Now, why have we arrived at this situation? And one of the big cause for this disconnect is that the skills that are required for the industry are not exactly the skills that are required for college admissions. Yeah. So there's an entirely different set of criterion for college admissions in most
But
most
Manjit, Manit, we have to produce good human beings.
Absolutely, I'm coming to that.
School is not a training institution.
I'm coming
College
to
is
that.
not a training institution. We've got to produce good human beings who can think. Yes, I mean, he wants robots, I agree with him, but we have to produce good human beings also.
So absolutely,
With
sir.
emotion.
I think taking a cue from that, I'll talk about my own experience of education. You know, I dreaded my education, and I thought when I sat together with my team of educators when I started my school 15 years ago, the first thing that we looked at was that our education ensured that we were never going to be able to be completely ourselves. It robbed us of that essential freedom. Sri Aurobindo talks about two things as the purposes of education. He talks about Swabhav and he talks about Swadharma. So is our education equipping us to be comfortable in our own Swadharma, in our own Swabhav? And if we are not comfortable in our own Swabhav, we are not going to find our Swadharma, which is our purpose, our calling. How many people sitting, perhaps this is a room full of educators. When I do workshops with my parents and I ask them, how many of you think you found your purpose in life? They say, maybe in 300 parents, 2 or 3 hands will go up. And I ask them then, do you recognize that not being able to find your purpose in life is the curse of irrelevance in education? When a child at the age of 12 or 13 asks the question, why am I learning what I'm learning? The only answer that the child gets is that I have to do well in that exam, and that exam is going to get me into, that result is going to get me into the higher education institution. When we look at colleges, universities around the world, I was fortunately part of an initiative called Making Caring Common at the Harvard University. They're relooking their admission criterion to include kindness, to include being human, and not simply the essays that they have on a statement on purpose, a statement of purpose, and some of the other criterion that they have around your resume. They're expanding the criterion to push schools to start working in a certain direction. Around what everybody is talking about, the fourth industrial revolution, I think it is a reality. I think it is staring us very hard in the face. John Murray, somebody wrote a book in 2004 called What Will People Do? And in 2004, he was worried that computers are going to take over what we're talking about right now, because the World Economic Forum introduced us to the concept of Industry 4.0 last year. He was talking about the same thing in 2004. And one of the things that he spoke about, which is never going to get automated, was cars. He spoke about the fact that we will not have autonomous cars, and within 6 years, this was a person researching on this subject. Within 6 years, Google was testing out the first driverless car. AT&T, around 1985, took on McKinsey to give them an estimate of how many people will be using mobile phones in the next 10 or 15 years. They gave an estimate of 9 lakh people. This was McKinsey. So when disruptive changes happen, people don't really anticipate how much is going to change, but it's very evident that the scale, both the scale and the pace of change that we're going to see in the next 10 years is going to be way beyond our own imagination. Now, I went through a few reports on what the future of jobs would look like. There was a report by Oxford Martin, there was another one on by the World Economic Forum, and all these reports were talking about some very basic things in terms of skills. So how are you going to prepare people for the jobs of the future? And I won't say what kind of jobs, of course, the routine manual, the routine cognitive, the non-routine manual. Some of these jobs are absolutely going to go. So the machines still probably will not be able to feel. Yeah. So these reports talk about two factors, two things that we'll have to develop in students. One is social intelligence, empathy, the ability to perceive another person's emotions, to be able to look at your gesture and understand what I should give to you, to be able to work in teams, to be able to change hearts and minds, to be able to adapt, to be able to persuade people, influence people, to be able to resolve conflicts. These are the skills that we'll need in workplaces going forward. The ability to care, the ability to service, the ability to share. When we're looking at a sharing economy where access is taking precedence, dominance over ownership in models like Airbnb, in models like BlaBlaCars, and we must see what is happening in France in restaurants, to take another example of how the sharing economy is going to take over, where French families are actually opening out their homes to tourists to have an authentic French meal. And small French restaurants are crying foul. Say, wow, this is not done. I mean, I spent all this money on this restaurant, and obviously people want to go and have a meal with a French family and not with 40 other families. Yeah, so as we're moving into the sharing economy, please know that every time you're riding an Uber, it's not just you who is rating the driver. The driver is also rating you back. Yeah. So in 5 years, being a nice human being, another 5, 7, 10 years, will become an economic imperative. And I think in many ways, and that may be a bit of a contrarian view and a controversial view, possibly, but the machines and technology, as they're coming in and as we're moving into the age of a shared economy, these machines will compel us to be human. And maybe it's God's way of saying that you guys have become such big machines, you operate so mechanically, that I'm going to give you more machines, perhaps implant some machines also into you so you can get back to being human. And I think just that being human is the process that educators will have to work on. And I can talk a lot more about how we can get there, but definitely one thing I'd like to add, to bring that human out, to bring that swabhav out, to bring that swadharm in, we will have to give students far more immersive experiences. Manjula, to your point, we may still need the water cycle, but not for the technicality of the water cycle, but for the child to understand a system. How does a system work? To develop systems thinking. And we can't be running the water cycle for 8 periods and the next period comes after 3 periods. It will have to be immersive experiences where children experience the water cycle in action, probably spend 2 weeks simply doing that, where we eliminate these domain boundaries, where we move above just literacy and numeracy, where we equip children to design, to create, and creative intelligence is the second thing apart from social intelligence, the ability to pull together disparate bits of information, to make connections, to see patterns, to be able to use that to solve problems. And I think Finland is doing a brilliant job at it, and I don't know how we're going to bring that model in, but some of the practices are definitely worth emulating.
Thank you, Manit. Now, before we open up for questions, one question here, one here, then lunch, all right? Uni wants to say something, but Nick has got a 1.5-year wonderful, sweet daughter. I don't know how you're going to educate her to face all this, Nick. You've got to be worried. Don't keep smiling. You've got to worry now. Go ahead.
Since I only scared all of you, I also have to give a solution for it. I thought about that. It's already there in my mind. What you need to make as a change is there is no need for educating somebody all the way up to 12th standard with English, Hindi, local language, mathematics, physics, chemistry, everything. The world is going to be more of verticalization, not for generalization. So there was a time when the brain absorption capacity was much lower, so you had to give maybe 17 years of age to be crossing for somebody to get into verticalization. Today you can start it much earlier. If I were you, what I would do is that half the time I'll spend for general education and the balance will be for vocational training. Somebody asked about where are the future jobs going to be. There will be approximately 2.5 billion mobile phones in India in the next 10 years time. You'll be needing 2.5 million minimum people to service mobile phones in this country. You'll be having 300 washing machines, 300 million washing machines. That's I mean, I don't know what number I'm going to talk about.
I don't think you want our children to...
What I want to say is that the jobs are going to be there.
We want to be like you, running companies, not mobile phones and washing machine men.
Please, that's the way you can expose somebody to something like that, and he may possibly decide to be getting on to higher education much later. Okay. We're trying to believe that our children are... See, please remember, the absorption capacity is much, much better. We are far superior than our forefathers. And our children are going to be far, far ahead of us in brain absorption capacity. Expose them much earlier. And possibly, I would imagine of a day when somebody could get an average age of PhD in India will be 17 years.
17 years?
Yeah, it's what I'm looking forward to. And you will create the science of the world for tomorrow, because the science of the world of today is not what is going to be applicable for India. I have that kind of a vision. I certainly do believe that Indians are going to be overtaking the world. I am not negative or pessimistic about that. But the way we are driving the vehicle of India, copying from the way it has happened for the rest of the world, I really picked on what you mentioned about. Our problems are different. The population of 17.5% of the world, that is 1 out of 5 of every living human being an Indian, having only less than 1% of the oil and gas resources of the world. Are you going to conquer the rest of the world to get the oil for you? You need to be creating technology for India if you want to be developing. So that is intellectual capability. And somebody has already done it in 1982, multiple intelligence. Robots can take care only of one item, that is one logical intelligence. There are 7 ports for the medulla oblongata of human being. Of that, one only will be replaced by robo. What my colleague spoke about over here is related to interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, environmental intelligence, musical intelligence, which is resting in everybody. If you are able to be co-creating along with us and developing that, robo will be only one among them. Are you looking at that? Our school is what I asked. So you need to be changing those kind of items. That's all what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any questions here? Yes, sir. Then we come here and here.
In Indian perspective, it has been assumed that values and soft skills are learned at home. The aim of school has been considered that, to provide good employment. So while we are talking about school education, parents are sending their kids, literacy is increasing 98% to 99%. The first aim to send a child to a good school is to ensure that how he is going to get good employment. This is what aim has become.
Yes. So what
in
is the
today's
question?
India.
What is the question?
Question is, we must decide what is the aim of education, school education first,
Okay.
and then we should move on.
Okay, that's a statement. Anybody here? One lady, yes. Yes, madam.
I was wondering if while you were speaking, you found your thoughts all clashing, if you saw conflict in what you're saying, because what I heard from you is that as global leaders and industry leaders here, you're teaching for market, you're creating employability, and you're making choices while you do that for children to decide whether they should do geography now or whether they should look at water or not. And you're not really you're talking about obsolescence in the next 4 or 5 years, and yet the teaching for life, which requires to be the vision for school education for 3.0, is absent. So I could not really get what was being said over here, because one is the doomsday scenario, and then there is
It's the real scenario, not doomsday, real.
Because a lot of schools that we have worked with, the most creative fields and ideas come when children are left to explore sciences and subjects, and we don't tell them that robotics is the future or music is a solution. They come up with it themselves. They observe the crow on top of a tree. So I wanted to know if in this discussion between all of you, you hear the discord and the lack of focus on teaching for life as opposed to teaching for employment.
Okay, okay. I mean, I'll just say that we have very disparate views. At the middle, at the center, there's a common theme of worry, what to do next. And I think the solution is to let the child explore, to find, discover, etc. You want to answer that, Anuradha? Because you came closest among us to more emotion, excluding you, Kiran. No.
Question really is, why is the focus on teaching for market? Why are we looking at what is the market going to be like? Why are we looking at employability? Because the market, as you yourself said,
yes.
Mohan, the technology is moving so fast, we don't know what the future is going to be.
Yeah, this is everybody's perspective, right? To me, I didn't think everybody was just talking about job opportunities. We talked a lot about creativity, and this creativity leads into job opportunities. So yes, there was a technology part of it, in which we always use that too. But I personally think that a lot of schools are working a lot on creativity and what the kids work on, which eventually leads them to their job opportunities.
And what about life skills? How do they deal with losing a job because they're obsolete?
Of course, that's all part. It's all part of personal skill training sets, which we do, which schools do. See, when we're saying we're not only teaching math, science, and history, there's a lot more which goes with it. Yes.
Yeah, please, Kiran.
I'll just say one line to that. I think Manit said it very well. There is no disjunct. If you're an educator, there can never be a disjunct, because you will always be educating for life, and the life skills that you need are what he actually talked about. So I don't see it as a disjunct.
Okay, Manit, you want to say something?
If we just look at basic education theory, with whether we talk about experiential learning or we talk about constructivism as a theory, it's very well defined, and I don't think there are any contradictions. So many years, and even when we look at what Finland is doing, if closer home we looked at what the Krishnamurti schools have been doing or what the Sri Aurobindo schools have been doing in the country, it's all about creating good human beings. And if anything, employment and yes, to some extent you're right that right now there's so much of a clamor for skills, and possibly in these skills we'll again start focusing more on the cognitive skills and forget about the non-cognitive and the socio-emotional skills. And I think as educators we need to keep reminding ourselves that our primary responsibility is to create good human beings who are comfortable in their skin and who will be good citizens, who will contribute to the society, who will create a sustainable world, and make a positive difference.
26 crore kids, please remember. Yes, sir.
Yeah, first of all...
Manit, I'm so sorry. Yeah, please, sir.
Mr. Pai, this is a very interesting panel. In fact, one of the most interesting panels I've listened to. Everybody was... They had very good things to say. Now my question is in the backdrop. I'll just put the backdrop in a minute. The future is already here, and as described by Mrs. Shroff and other people, and either it's a risk or it's an opportunity. So the future is already here. In the Indian context, we unfortunately are in an environment where it's public versus private education, unfortunately, okay? Which means either some people think that a certain section is a runaway vagabond and they want to dictate, and then there is resentment to that. Now, my fear is that in this battle we'll lose out on the opportunity of the future. Do your panelists think that we should create an environment in this country, across the country, where first of all it is everybody's together, it's private and public, and we must enlist the top percentile of graduates into education. We must create an environment where the top 20, top 30% of all graduates from applied science, languages to whatever, math, become educators, and then we must give them the freedom to do what they should be doing.
Okay. Anybody wants to answer in the panel? Hang on. No, not you. Panel, anybody wants to answer? No, we'll stop. We have to stop. You see, I think Kiran made a very important point. The rest of us spoke about disruption in the way you learn. She said the regulatory aspect has to be fixed first, is extremely important. And the school panel of FICCI is focused on fixing the regulatory aspect. We need interaction with the government, we need the secretaries to talk to us, and we have to do a lot more work to make this happen and not restrict ourselves to the top 1% of India, but take care of India, because it's the larger part of India which is going to determine your government. Folks, thank you very much for this very fascinating discussion. Please give them a standing ovation for the great thought. I think we're a fascinating panel.
We break for lunch now. The next session begins at 2 p.m. Delegates are requested to please move to the banquet for lunch, and speakers on the second floor boardroom. Thank you.
I hate the fact because I'm a provider in education. The reality is that
No, I don't have cards. I've just got that. I'm the chair of the skill council. Please work with us.
Yeah,
What?
का फ्लाइट मेरे को टिकट में देखना पड़ेगा, ऐसे आइडिया नहीं है।